morning. We'll get started. I hope everyone has had a cup of coffee or something to eat. So my name is Milind Dev. I'm the EGI director. I'm also a professor in chemical engineering. And on behalf of EGI, I would like to welcome you to our annual meeting. We did have this meeting virtually last year in May, and we are grateful now that we are able to meet in person. I think this type of an exchange where we are able to meet in person gives us more opportunities to talk about mutual interests. So I'll start with today's agenda. I'll stand away from the screens here. So my talk is basically a more broad-based view of where EGI is going based on what we perceive is happening in the industry and in federal government and so on. Then we have Professor McPherson, Brian, talking about carbon capture and sequestration, which is of significant interest or continues to be of significant interest. Then we have Joe Moore and John McLennan discussing an update on Forge and what we want to, how we are going to use that as a leverage or an anchor to proceed to other geothermal areas. We have a relatively new area in EGI, the energy efficiency, which I consider to be the low-hanging fruit for carbon management. And we have some experts from campus, Cody Powell, who some of you have heard, and Masood Parwania, who is working on smart grids and integration, energy integration, which again, I think is really needed as we look at all energy systems. So they'll share that hour and then we'll have lunch. So the traditional areas of what can be considered petroleum exploration and basinal studies will be discussed after lunch. And, for some of you, we are going to have the advisory board meeting at 3, and then as you have been seeing in front of you and everywhere, this is our 50th anniversary. So most of you will be at the dinner starting at 5:30. So that's the agenda for the day. What at least I expect out of this meeting is shown here. This laser does not work on the screen, but that's okay. I guess you can. Anyway, so basically I think when you come here in person, we are able to showcase what we are doing almost project by project and capabilities. And when you discuss this, I think in person, you get a better feel for what's happening here. I would like to end this presentation with, of course, some of you are members, corporate members of the Energy and Geoscience Institute, so I'll talk about the benefits of membership. And one of our objectives is also to understand industrial relevance and needs so that we target those type of areas and projects. So right now we are seeing unprecedented changes in the energy landscape, both from a technological perspective, from a policy perspective, and investment perspectives, right? So we would like to hear industrial vantage point, and also we would discuss what our perceptions are with respect to the energy landscape. And then obviously what I would like to see is, if we don't have specific projects identified already, pathways to developing collaborations and projects. And I do believe that because technology needs to be developed and implemented, the need for academic industry partnership is absolutely essential, is critical. Um, from your point of view, I think you're looking at the future workforce and its education. And as I was saying, we are looking, of course, financial aspects are one thing, but we are also looking for making a difference, making an impact. So the stuff that we work on and we develop, we would like to see that implemented or practiced. So it needs to be a win-win proposition, and that's what we would like to see in all of the areas that we are working on. So I'll start with this energy transition slide. Everybody is now thinking or talking about approaching net zero. The timetable varies 2030, 2035, 2050, whatever. This slide is from, I have the reference there, looking at what the possibilities are, getting away from coal, using this particular one I liked because it has, at least in the transition, a practical approach to using, I guess, natural gas. And so it has more natural gas use, managing carbon as we move forward, and then some of the associated technologies in batteries and hydrogen storage and so on. So some of the key areas here are obviously energy storage, if we are going to rely on renewables, hydrogen, which is a component of storage, carbon capture and sequestration, and I'll talk a little bit about so-called negative emissions too, and how at least it is being perceived right now, and then increased emphasis on renewables. So EGI does have strong positions in definitely in CCUS. We are looking at hydrogen technologies and energy storage, which is somewhat of a natural extension of our geothermal work. And as I said, with partnerships from across campus, we have started looking at energy efficiency and renewables and energy integration. So I think we are in a strong position to provide capabilities and pathways for different constituencies to approach net zero, however you structure it or frame it. But not so fast, right? I mean, suddenly in the last 8 months, people have realized that we have to take care of people right now. That if energy transition is a slightly longer term or a medium term goal, the energy supplies need to be secure and need to be provided now. And the conflict in Ukraine has basically highlighted that and changes the market situations, of course, and the supplies. I think to a certain extent this started with the pandemic, right? When the demand went down, but still the supply chain was affected significantly. And anyway, so this particular, I think there is something like 40% of, I had some numbers on the total amount of gas that comes to Europe from Russia and how it needs to be replaced, or at least find alternate energy sources for that source. And people are really thinking about what's going to happen this winter, right? So, and I did attend the WoodMac symposium on exploration, and it became very clear that at least in the near term, people are now looking seriously again at exploration and finding new kind of lower carbon targets for production. So that's something that needs to be considered as well. And So where is EGI in all of this? We continue to look at hydrocarbons as one of our core capabilities. Um, so as you can see on this right upper quadrant, we have various aspects of hydrocarbon research that we have done and will continue to support. Um, Forge is, geothermal, but this works on this. Is a we'll talk a little more about that, but it by itself it's a fantastic project, and I think that by partnering on Forge in various capacities, there is it's a benefit, I think, to all of the parties, and we are using that to get into, as I said, energy storage and other types of geothermal resources, renewables, and so on. If we are looking at renewables, then batteries and critical minerals become a big part of what we need to look at. So we have started looking at critical minerals, and over the last 15 years, we have had a significant portfolio of carbon, particularly sequestration projects, and now we are combining that with some of our work on capture, and as we extend this carbon portfolio. So those are the four quadrants, and lately we have been looking at policy as well, and Brian McPherson will talk a little bit about 45Q and how we are integrating that into our thinking as we structure some of our projects. Okay, so we'll start with Forge because it's, I think, unique and not just for the university, but even for the Department of Energy, the magnitude of the project and the scope of it, I think, is just fantastic. And you will hear an update from the managing principal investigator of the project, Joe Moore. It's far-reaching in the sense that not only technologically it's cutting literally new ground, but going to be a game changer if it's successful in getting the fluids to circulate. And as it goes forward, it literally is taking the oil and gas technology and implementing that in this particular environment. So it's learning as the project proceeds. So it's scientifically, technologically, societally a unique project, and the EGI team has just done a fantastic job, I think, in managing such a complex project, as you can see, with all of its constituents. There is quite a bit of learning in fracturing, understanding how that works, and learning about induced seismicity, which becomes more and more important as we look at all of these subsurface injection systems. And then, as I said, this is one aspect of geothermal. There we are also looking at shallower, medium depth and shallower resources for direct heat use and building efficiencies and so on. So this will continue to be an anchor in what EGI will do over the next 10 years, but as an anchor expanding into other areas of earth heat. So that's something that we'll be doing. As I mentioned, we have had 20 plus years of conducting carbon science and engineering under Professor McPherson. There are several projects and field sites here that the group has been looking at. So the key takeaway here is if you consider research in CCUS, we still don't have million tons per year type of injection sites in the United States. In fact, not any, I think, right? Maybe and they're still being in the planning process. So, right, but we need to make a difference. We will need several million tons per year injection sites. So as companies that are producers, so if you want to address your source, or technological providers are looking to um, match the source to the sink, you would still need, I think, a good technological understanding of the entire workflow of separating the CO2, of compressing the CO2, of transporting the CO2. And I do understand that the oil and gas industry has a significant expertise in many components of this workflow. But I think there are still some that needs to be managed and matched, and I think EGI would be a very strong partner in providing that knowledge. And we can talk more about this, and as I said, you'll hear quite a bit about this in uh, Brian's talk, which is right after this. So as there are several projects, but I do want to mention this particular one, the SMART initiative, which is science informed machine learning to accelerate real time decisions in subsurface applications. It's a long acronym. Um, but I'm highlighting this because of the importance of data and the use of machine learning. So, this is something that we almost envisioned as engineers and geoscientists. We said we do operate stuff that is on the surface, right, as in a control room type of a setting, in a control room type of an atmosphere, where we're watching what is going on and adjusting parameters for the outcomes that we desire. So this I do as a chemical engineer for a facility. So why can't we do this for a subsurface system? Obviously, subsurface systems are uncertain and also very complex, or much more complex. Anything that is natural, I think, is quite complex. But we can use the power of data, and that comes in all the time, and machine learning to address the specific outcomes of that project. And EGI, I think, would be doing that um, a lot with all of the data that it currently has. So this is one example of it. And then I think some of you have heard that we have now unveiled the second generation of iCords, offshore software. This has about, I think, 40,000 wells or something of that order. And it's now has a lot more interpretive capability and correlative capability. And we'll continue to improve on these type of databases to provide this as a almost a research platform for you to look at areas of interest for the various companies. So there will be more discussion of this and a demonstration about it this afternoon. Again, the main point here is that we are using data the best we can to add value to the database that currently exists. So we're doing the same thing with a new critical minerals database that we just started. It has about 500,000 points right now, data point, but this is more a resource identification in terms of a reserve estimate, in terms of how much of it can practically be mined or extracted, is something that we'll keep adding based on some of the partners that we have brought into this type of an area. I did want to mention US Shale. So here we have developed a software called Shale Smart that looks at geologic and production data and provides optimization scenarios for the various things they would like to do. So I would want to say that we did have a very strong shale portfolio about 5 years ago, about 50 projects or so in US shales, and I guess it was the pandemic or also it was the maturity of the resource itself where we have not had we have not had a lot of projects in this, but basically we would be looking at using our understanding of fractures and Professor McLennan's work in geomechanics, the machine learning component that I talked about, to provide additional value in projects in shales. And of course, I think we do have a strong position in looking at either enhanced oil recovery type of application with either CO2 or gas injection, or eventually using these as very large repositories of CO2. And so I think in all of these, EGI would be able to provide some good capabilities and partnerships if there was interest. As I mentioned, we cannot be stagnant, right? We need to continue to grow. So we are bringing in more faculty. These are from across campus, but we are also looking at through Forge and other projects looking beyond campus. But we do work with Lauren Bergenhaar and Carrie Johnson in geology. As I mentioned, we have Cody Powell now in EGI. Masood, you'll hear from them today. And then we are not going to talk about critical minerals a lot today, but we have Bobby Mohanty from chemical engineering, and Jashi's Jin is here in mineral extraction and mining. So that those are areas that we'll be expanding to. As I mentioned, there is unprecedented levels of investment in what is considered energy transformation in the federal government. You see these, in fact, this is just coming out, $8 billion for 4 DOE hydrogen hubs. And EGI will be at least the leading partner for the state in looking at these hydrogen hub creations. Then in counter to that, there is a big emphasis on direct air capture for creating negative emission scenarios. So taking CO2 out of the atmosphere or creating technologies that would have negative carbon dioxide impact. And there are $4 billion, so almost $1 billion each for the 4 direct air capture hubs. And actually there is one hub where ConocoPhillips, I think, is a partner, and we are working with that group as well. So EGI is involved in discussions in these 2 core groups, mining and minerals, as I mentioned. And there is a new FOA out on taking the oil and gas technology and transforming it to or adapting it for use in geothermal. It's called GEOD, and again we are submitting. So it's ideally suited for EGI because Forge to a certain extent has already been doing that. And ironically, oil and gas industry is also learning something from Forge as you see the tools being applied to higher temperatures to where you need better technology and better tools. So so there's something that we are getting plugged into. So finally, before I talk about the benefits of membership, what we are looking at is really what I would consider energy resiliency. As I mentioned, because of the energy security and because of the traditional EGI strength, we will continue to look at specific basin studies and engineering analysis of existing basins or reservoirs. And in the first go, we are looking at, in the energy transition, reducing the carbon footprint and save costs. And both can be done by looking at carbon emissions. And Cody will talk about our work in efficiency. We are, as I mentioned, carbon capture projects, hydrogen, energy storage, which both of these, hydrogen and energy storage, have what are called Earthshot designations by Department of Energy. So we are looking at that. And then eventually we may have to look at situations where zero discharge from all these super basins. So we may have to take stuff out of there and put stuff back in. And that's a concept that has been discussed. I think it was a WoodMac webinar on that, a worldwide webinar on that. We recently got awarded a grant from Utah State of Higher Education for creating this resilient energy program, where it's a workforce development program for um, energy transition, and we have created this 5 course sequence. We are just unveiling it and just starting it, and we'd like to partner with the industry. We do have some partners locally, but we're also looking at expanding it nationally so that we are able to tailor it to the needs of the industry. Okay, so going through now quickly, maybe I won't go through all of these in detail. If you are a corporate associate, and several of you are, you do have access to the online reports and data, EGI Connect, and that will be discussed this afternoon. Um, New research studies, as I said, just for partnering with a project like Forge or some of the large carbon sequestration projects, I think it will be greatly beneficial for the industry uh, because of the scope of these projects and the magnitude of those projects. So those are but we would also be investing in some of the capabilities that we already have. So those are the new research studies that the members um, would have access to. Plus, they would be able to drive those projects, right? I mean, you would be able to help us um, conceptualize and drive those projects. Um, Anyway, we also have a peer assist with EGI scientists, where you have a week of time from with specific expertise that you want to partner with. We do offer training and field courses, and we are in summer we'll be offering the Utah geology field course that we used to run that as part of our petroleum engineering program, which again was stopped for a few years. So these newer energy transition projects that are ongoing, the geothermal projects, the carbon projects, the energy efficiency projects, you would have access to the PIs, the graduate students, the postdocs that are working on these projects. Um, we do have just at EGI some lab capabilities, but also on campus broadly, state-of-the-art facilities that members would have access to at a discounted price. We will be starting a technical webinar series. We have done a few of them, but we'll be expanding on that. And then you have a conference like this where we'll be able to share ideas and discuss priorities. So those are, I guess, a quick look at the benefits. I have more details on each of these, which we can talk about either over breaks or during the day. And then we do have a new addition, our corporate relations manager, Regina Echo. She would be the primary contact for industrial connections from EGI. So with that, I will stop and take a few questions if you have any questions at this stage. Thank you.